Color, the continuing story of Peyton Place. Starring Dorothy Malone as Constance Mackenzie, Ed Nelson as Michael Rossi, Ryan O'Neill as Rodney Harrington, Barbara Parkins as Betty Anderson, Tim O'Connor as Elliot Carson, Christopher Connolly as Norman Harrington, Patricia Morrow as Rita Harrington, James Douglas as Stephen Cord.
Rodney Harrington and Betty Anderson Cord have spent a long afternoon together. An afternoon that exploded in an embrace and ended in bitterness. Betty, at this moment in her life, shortly after Martin Peyton's attorneys filed a divorce action in her behalf, has no intention of involving herself with Rodney once again. And Rodney must decide whether his interest in Betty is intensely personal or a means of hurting Betty's husband, Stephen.
How did you get in here?
What difference does it make? We have to talk.
I don't want to talk.
We have to, Betty.
Stephen, I don't want to talk. I don't want to argue. I don't want to anything. Can't you leave me alone?
It was very hard getting in there. I felt like a fool, explaining, lying, and get in my own wife's room.
Why did you?
Because I don't enjoy pounding on doors, begging my wife to let me in.
You stop calling me your wife.
I filed a petition against Martin Peyton today.
Really?
A petition to declare him incompetent. Now, it's a rather complicated proceeding. There'll be a hearing, witnesses, a medical report, among other things. Court hasn't set a date yet, but the calendar isn't very crowded, so it should be coming up soon. Are you listening?
Mm-hmm.
No reaction except mm-hmm.
Well, what do you want me to do, Stephen? Cheer, clap my hands, admire you?
Now, you know how important this hearing is to me, to us. You agreed to work with me, to help me.
100 years ago.
A few months ago. I need your help.
Do you, Stephen? Have you ever really needed anything from me?
I do now.
Well, it's too late. I'm not interested in your hearing. I'm not interested in whether Martin Peyton is sane or insane. And I couldn't care less about your desperate need for revenge against him.
Now, I want you there. Something's going to come out of that hearing. Important facts to both of us. Now, doesn't that interest you?
No, Stephen, it doesn't. All I'm really interested in now is getting some sleep.
They say sleep is a form of escape.
Do they?
Is it too much of an effort to face the truth?
What truth?
The truth about Adrienne and me.
Stephen, let's not go into that right now.
I've never lied to you. I've told you things about myself I've never told anyone. Feelings that were buried so deep I could hardly bear to admit they were there. Now, I know it hasn't been easy living with me. I've never been able to hang loose, to accept things casually, either success or rejection. That's why I've never gotten over the fact you became my wife, that you actually accepted me, for better or for worse. Now, you'll never know how much that meant to me. I made a vow. I promised I'd never hold back anything from you, no matter how painful it was. Everything I thought or felt, all the things I wanted to forget or made believe never happened, I made myself tell you. Well, I've kept my promise. Not because I wanted your approval or your sympathy, but because I wanted to be as honest with you as I could.
I saw you. I saw you and Adrienne. I saw the both of you leave Martin Peyton's Boston home.
You take Adrienne's word over mine.
Yes.
Oh, why? Why?
Well, maybe I learned the lesson you taught me too well, Stephen.
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about trust, about belief. Now, when you were handed the brain report, I tried and tried to tell you it wasn't true. But you found it very difficult to believe me. Well, now it's my turn. I'm facing that very same problem.
I did believe you eventually. It took time, but I finally came around.
Was it time, Stephen, or was it because you wanted to frustrate your grandfather's plans? You see, I don't have an excuse like that, a reason to believe you. So when you try and tell me that nothing happened between you and Adrienne, I don't believe you.
Oh, I see. Well, then I guess there's nothing else to say. If you could come to the hearing, I'd appreciate it. Otherwise, I won't bother you again.
Rod.
The door's open.
Hi. Did you just wake up?
No.
Whoever would have thought that a brat like you would have turned out to be such a pretty, married, pregnant lady?
I don't know.
How would you like me to take you for a ride through New England's beautiful countryside and tell you a few of my problems? That yet-to-be-born child needs fresh air. Lots of fresh air. Hey.
Rod, I don't want to go for a ride. I'm sorry. I just don't feel like it today.
What is it, Rita?
I'd really rather not talk about it.
Had Norm take one of his stupid pills this morning?
You know, it's different being married. It's not a game. When you have a real fight, you can't just forget about it and start going out with somebody else.
Yes. Yes, I know. I'm not married. I'm not a member of the club. I just sort of bounce around, don't I? Look, you and Norman are something very important to me. And when you're upset, I want to know about it. And you'll just have to take my word that I'll understand.
Well, after we argued and argued, we just stood there staring at each other. Like we were so angry. And he looked at me like I'd done something awful to him, like he'd caught me killing somebody.
Well, you and I both know how ornery Norman can be sometimes. And you're married, you said that. So we can chalk up half of that to Norman's orneriness. Hey, but what about the other half?
The other half is my father.
It figures.
But I can't hate him for telling me that Norman's too smart and too capable to be wasting himself on a loading dock.
What if Norman quits his job on the loading dock and goes back to school? Who pays the bills? He loves you, and he wants to support you himself. He's not just being stubborn about not asking the family for help. Your father doesn't know him. He doesn't understand what you mean to him. Look, Rita, your needs and your illness, well, they've made a man out of Norman. A proud, respectable man.
I know that. And I love him so much for it, but...
Well, Rita, maybe he just thought you were trying to take that away from him.
But I wasn't. All I want is for him to have the best opportunities for his future.
Well, maybe he thought you were just forcing him into being a schoolboy again.
Oh, I wasn't trying to do that. But he needs a good education. Anybody with half a brain knows that.
And Norman knows it. But he's not interested right now, Rita. He likes what he's doing, as miserable as it may seem. And he's proud of himself. I should be so proud. Rita, we can't take that away from him. Not because of what your father says, not because of what anybody says. We can't take that away from him. Have some coffee.